Previously on Ballz.
And Telford Vice is over at the Wanderers. How's it going, Telford?
Hello, mate. Not so bad yourself.
Very, very good. Thank you. See a nice little tight finish for your for the openers for the what is it? The CLT20.
Yes, good stuff, wasn't it? And if all those games can end like that, you know, David Miller, I should say, getting smashed in the face and coming back to win the game. Well, you know, that's what cricket is about, and it doesn't really matter if you haven't a clue who Uber next are. You know,
Does anyone care?
Exactly. So there we are.
Yeah, I know. It's very good. Every time John kept saying this after
Uber
Uber
next.
next, I said, I'm next for what? What are you lining me up for?
Well, I discovered yesterday that Uber is, in fact, it's not the poor man's Hoover. It's a Sri Lankan province, is what it is.
Yeah.
And Next, I think, is the sponsor name. But there we are.
I thought a poor man's Hoover was Lindsay Lohan.
What next?
No comment.
No comment, yeah. All right, so the CLT20 is underway. Well, what kind of crowd was there?
The crowd? There was no crowd. In fact, the team was informed of the crowd changes, not the other way around.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering. Not too much again. I mean, we've just seen the T20 World Championship, which is all good and well, straight into this this competition, and I'm just wondering what the turnout's going to be like.
Well, you know, if we do the pros and cons, I mean, it was a strange morning in Johannesburg this morning. We woke up and there was noise and all over the place, and not just under the duvet. And you know, it just was really, really all over, and it looked like we were in for a very wet start. But then, of course, it's brightened up beautifully, and it's turned into a magnificent afternoon. But long story short, or long story long, if you like, that obviously kept a lot of people away. Tonight, let's see, there's a smattering more people now as I look down to the grass bank and whatnot. The Auckland Aces are up against the Sialkot Stallions, and they're from Pakistan. And as we know, large Asian community here in Joburg, and let's see if they come out and support the boys.
No, they're from Auckland. I couldn't figure out where they were from. All right, so Auckland against Sialkot. That is the game coming up tonight. When are our local boys in action?
The local boys, now you're asking me. Local boys, of course, aren't part of the qualifying series, and the tournament is proper kicks off on the weekend. So, you know, they've got a couple of days to kick their heels. I've been to 1,001 press conferences, I can tell you, with almost everybody who's involved in this tournament, and it feels like I've been talking to the assistant groundsman as well. So everybody has sat behind the table. So it's very much in that stage, and of course, thank goodness now we've actually had a game to write about. So
absolutely. At least you've got something to talk about. And you could see from Albie Morkelly's demeanour when we Skyped him a little earlier on, having a chance just to kick his heels. Although he had quite a bit of time to kick his heels even when he was playing or part of the World Championship. But is relaxing at his home in Centurion. Obviously, he'll be in action a little bit later on. But we spoke to him and Gary Kirsten, and we got onto the topic once again of the South African team makeup and that issue, I think, which is one you brought up or discussed when I wasn't here last time, about should Cullis and Amla be in the same T20 side?
Well, yes, it is a problem. And in fact, I need to give the credit to Herschel Gibbs for that, because he was wondering about that on Twitter. In fact, he wasn't wondering at all. He was saying that they shouldn't be in the same T20 side. And I was caught out completely. I honestly thought Jacques Cullis would go off to that tournament and just set it right. And of course, that did not happen. And he and Amla were, in fact, at the bottom of the run scorers list of the South Africans. So, you know, it was completely didn't happen. I honestly think it's time to put Jacques Cullis out to pasture as a T20 player, certainly in the South African context. What he wants to do, I mean, in the international context, what he wants to do in the IPL and whatever else is his own business, and if people are going to pay money to do that, then fine. But, you know, it just didn't work, and if we're trying to preserve the oak for test matches and World Cups, then let's not mess him about with this stuff anymore.
Yeah, and I was, when you're chatting to Gary, one of the things that struck me is when you look at sides that didn't do too well in that World T20, and I'm not saying that is particularly the reason, but one of the common threads was, and particularly with the two sides that he's been with, one now and his previous side, India and South Africa, if you count the number of test players and ODI players that are also playing T20, I mean, they talk about how much cricket the guys are playing, whereas you compare it to some of the other sides where their T20 side is completely foreign to their test side. India and South Africa, I think, are the two sides that have the most test players that are also playing T20 cricket.
And they're probably the two countries where the pressure to win anything absolutely bloody anything is just so huge and out of proportion to everything else. You know, I honestly don't think Australia care too much whether they make a mess of a World T20.
Yeah.
As long as they're winning more important games. But here in South Africa, you know, because I suppose South Africa haven't won an ICC trophy since 1998, and that's the only one, it just gets so skewed and completely bloated, this expectation. And of course, India is very similar. I mean, anything India play, they simply have to win.
Yeah.
So I think that does influence the way that people pick their teams in those countries.
It's not like both of them haven't got some depth where they could actually pick a specialist T20 side, though. I mean, we just saw, a guy like David Miller. He wouldn't look out of place in that South African side. There's a few of them. I mean, guys like Faf du Plessis. Okay, I don't know if they're looking at him as a long sort of permanent test player, but certainly in the shortened form of the game, he should be someone that's a regular there, and maybe one or two of the test players, but not as many as they got.
Not as many as they have, but you know, we've seen what happens when they send the second best team in the country to Zimbabwe and they get beaten by people like Zimbabwe and Bangladesh. Then there's an uproar and there's unhappiness, and I suppose there should be, and I think that just adds to the pressure to pick your best side as much as you can, and it's not a pretty picture, but it's part of the reality of South African cricket. And you know, once they start winning trophies with whichever side, then I think that will change.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Collins sits here very quietly. I've never seen you so quiet.
No, listen, I want to get stuck in here. Telford, how are you, mate?
Hello, mate. Not so bad yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I just watched the lad Johnny Morris. I used to play football with his dad, and I'm a great fan. And then you got the other lad, the wicket keeper, Quinton de Kock. Top quality lads, and if South African cricket ran properly, they would have been playing T20 at the top level coming into this tournament, and you would have had a nice change of staff after the rousing Test victory in England, which has now been completely overthrown by what happened at the T20 in Sri Lanka. You could have had a very different young side. Well, in my view, it has.
Yeah, in your view, it has. I really don't. I don't give it. I mean, I didn't feel any bit let down at all. The fact that we didn't progress any further. To me, T20 is, as I say, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It doesn't bother me. We lose a Test series against England or Australia.
Yeah.
You know, that'll sit with me for a week or two to a month or two of irritation. You know, and that's still the key thing.
It's Darren's show, Telford, so I agree with everything he just said.
You don't have to.
Okay, and listen.
Distance.
Just about, mate, with a snooker cue. Telford, have you heard this thing about AB de Villiers, where they're quite worried about him making the Australia tour?
You know, that's a whole nother kettle of fish, obviously, and a big issue. AB de Villiers, and I don't mean this in any way in an offensive way, is a good Dutchman kid. He really is. If you say, pick up that building, he will pick up that building or die trying. In
Pretoria, not trying to, yeah.
Don't start that again.
Yeah. But that's essentially what's happening. I was actually talking to Heine Kuhn about that today, because of course they peas out of the same pot, aren't they? And he was saying, yeah, it's exactly right. If you whatever you tell AB de Villiers to do, he will do his damnedest trying to do it. And the product's falling apart now. You know, you can't carry on like this. We can't keep loading his shoulders with mental jobs as well as physical jobs, and just keep loading and loading and loading. Something's got to give, and his ankle is given, his back is given, and now it potentially gets worse, because even if they take the wicket-keeping gloves away from him in the Test matches, well, his back is still not great, and I'm not sure how much better it is for you diving around a backward point compared to keeping wicket. We may have a long-term problem on our hands here.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, is long-term, is AB going to be our keeper? I mean, you know, he's done the job. He is a very good keeper, but we need him for in other areas, particularly if he's also going to be a captain of the future as well. Shouldn't we now be putting our stall out for somebody that's going to do the Mark Boucher role for us? For as long a period or close to a longer period that Mark Boucher did. Start looking at who our options are there. I don't know if Tommy is from a long-term point of view, but we should start looking around at maybe young Vilas or one of those guys and start getting them into the system now.
Absolutely, you really should. I think Tommy deserves his chance. He's put in the dues. He's the best wicket-keeper in the country in terms of glovemen. And I've watched him bat over the past few weeks more intensely than I think I've ever watched him. And that has got guts. He really has. He can come and guts it out for you. And I'm sick of this argument that we think of wicket-keepers as batsmen first and then worry about whether they can catch a ball.
But how many seasons will we get from him?
Not very many.
That's
but,
the problem.
That's okay. That's fine, because you've got the Willises and the Cox and a couple of others. And, you've got those kids coming up, and the talent is there and the quality is there, and they have the ambition. Even Aino Kun. There's nothing wrong with Aino Kun. I tell you what, you stick him in a couple of games, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah.
So, I think Mark Boucher was such a huge figure in terms of personality and everything he did for cricket and for the Proteas that it was impossible to see past him. You just couldn't see the future. I mean, what are we going to do next, kind of thing. And nobody, we shouldn't perhaps allow players to become that big in the firmament. Yeah. Maybe it's unhealthy to do that. And I suppose it's a credit to Bouch that he was able to do that. But we kind of took our eye off the ball in terms of who comes next.
Yeah.
And luckily, or maybe the system does work, and maybe we don't notice it well enough. There's a whole bunch of them out there.
Yeah.
It's not hopeless. And I think the best way forward is to use Tommy now as for the next 3 years, 2-3 years, whatever he's got left. He always looks like he's about to fall apart as well this time, Chulukila, and then he does something ridiculous, and you realise he's not.
Yeah.
He's stronger than he looks. Very good player, and I think that's the option. And then just make sure you keep those other oaks going as they should be going. And you
get young Jennings in the system now.
Yeah, there's the other Jennings.
Little one.
But Telford, Tommy is now 32. I mean, we're talking about a senior age for a cricketer, that, especially a wicket keeper. And when you say A.B. de Villiers will probably be his back, not wicket keeping, will be a lot better at short leg or wherever he wants to field. Wicket keeping, in Test cricket is 90 overs a day, up, down, up, down, up, down. And anyone that's been a wicket keeper will tell you that kills your back. And coming into this series, there was stories about his back not being right for the whole Test series. They have to stop A.B. de Villiers wicket keeping, and they have to bring the lad Quinton de Kock straight into the Test side, because he, in terms of batting and in terms of keeping, we don't see much of it for the Lions because of Tommy. He's the coming force.
And if he's the long term, if there is a long term thing, then that's exactly what they did with Mark Boucher. But also the other thing, when you say we took our eye off the ball, when Boucher was almost automatically his name was welded into the team list for how many years now. We think about how many of our young keepers, and I can remember there were a few around that time, they were thinking how they're ever going to get into the setup with Bouch there now, well entrenched, that we've lost to overseas, countries overseas. I think Neil's got his, he can think of 4.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if the boy from New Zealand, Kruger van Wyk, would have been a long-term option for us. But there's been a few youngsters that have said, look, we've got no chance, so let's head on overseas, and we've lost them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have disappeared. And what do you do? There's only space for one wicketkeeper in the national team, and occasionally you'll take one on a long tour to England or whatever, an extra. But it's a bit of a double-edged sword. And once you find a good one, obviously you want to stick with them, and that's what happened. You remember Nick Potters was in a battle to the death with Boucher right at the beginning of their career.
He was supposed to be the next logical guy, and then Bouch came in, and that's when Potters said, "Okay, well, that's me done. Cheers."
Yes, off to England, and then somebody like Wendell Bossinger was
there's the other one,
brilliant wicketkeeper. And he ended up just when the franchise system arrived. Well, then he stepped further down the pecking order because of course Griquas didn't get their own franchise, and he couldn't get in at Free State, and he just ended up fading away gracefully. And it's a great pity. It really is. But I'm not sure what you do about it. I really am not. If you can only pick one wicketkeeper, well then that's what you have to do.
Find your long-term option now, and I think get them into the system now. That's the thing. But look, I'm not going to find somebody immediately for Australia, so it looks like Tommy will be the guy if AB's not going to make that tour. And as you say, he definitely does deserve his chance because he's been one of the guys that's just been sitting waiting in the wings. So he will get that opportunity more than likely if AB's not going to make that tour. Telford, thanks for joining us again today.
No worries.
Always very interesting having you on Ballz Radio. Appreciate your time this afternoon. Enjoy the game later on.
I shall do.
Thanks
very
mate.
much.
Cheers, man.
Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go, Telford Weiss chatting cricket with us.
2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mondays to Fridays live on Ballz.co.za. Ballz.co.za.